Okay, we're on page 145. This is the story of Jacob's journey to find a wife. And I'm focusing on the dream that he had, a very famous dream with the ladder and the angels. So I'm going to start in verse 13, and we'll go through it today and tomorrow. And assuming we finish it before the end of tomorrow, then I'll do the preceding verses, which are interesting introduction, but not necessary to understand the content of the dream. So, starting in verse 13, I will translate for you the four verses that we're going to study. I'm sorry, verse 12, not 13. And he dreamt, and behold, a ladder was set earthward, and its top reached heavenward. That translation is literally correct. It's perfect. And behold, now, the English gives you angels of God. That's redundant. An angel, by definition, is God's representative. And the word in Hebrew is not angel. The word in Hebrew is malach, which means agent. Sometimes people mistranslate that word as messenger. It does not mean messenger. It comes from the word malacha, which means certain type of activity, performance, creative performance. Malach means agent. So the better translation is agents of God were ascending and descending on it. And behold, Hashem was standing over him, and he said, I am Hashem, God of Abraham your father, and God of Isaac. The ground upon which you are lying, to you I will give it, and to your descendants. Your offspring shall be as the dirt of the earth, not dust, dirt. And as you will see, dirt is better than dust, much better than dust. Dust is horrible. And the literal word in Hebrew is dirt, afar, not avak, which is dust. Your offspring shall be like the dirt of the earth, and you shall spread out powerfully westward and eastward and northward and southward. And all the families of the earth shall bless themselves by you and your offspring. Behold, I'm with you. I will guard you wherever you go. I will return you to the soil, for I will not forsake you until I have done what I've spoken about you, period. Okay, first thing I want you to do is read through and find me a word which appears a number of times and which looks dreadfully redundant. Maybe you could tolerate it once, but after that, it would be very easy to erase it and lose no content whatsoever. Which word is that?
Behold.
How about behold? How many times does behold appear in this passage?
4.
4 times, boys and girls, twice in 12, once at the beginning of 13 and once at the beginning of 15. 4 times it says behold. Now behold is a call to attention. Pay attention. Okay, I'm paying attention. 4 times in one passage. Is his mind drifting? You know, and what were the stocks like yesterday? Supposed to gains on the Dow Jones today. Why would you have it 4 times in one passage? Now, at the very least, each section that gets its own behold has something to tell us. It expresses some sort of idea. It would be inappropriate to say, it says, behold Q. Q is just backdrop for the next stuff that's coming up. If it gets a behold, it has to teach us something that's worthwhile knowing. If you have behold Q and stop, you should have learned something. So that puts a responsibility on the interpreter. Whatever comes after the behold has to have some independent content. It might depend on what comes before it, but it can't just be backdrop for what comes after it. That's going to be a requirement we have to live up to in explaining the behold. Are we together? Okay. Now let's start 12. 12 says, and he dreamt, and behold, a ladder was set earthward, and its top reached heavenward. And then comes another behold. So the first half, up to heavenward, has to teach us something. Now here's a thought about that first half, and you tell me if you think it fits into the words appropriately. The thought is, it says it was set earthward. Earthward means towards the earth. If you have a ladder that's set earthward, set means put in place. It was put in place to the earth, then it sounds like it's coming from heaven. The ladder is coming from heaven and reaching down to the earth. Right? Coming to the earth. Does that fit the words?
No,
Why not?
because set implies that it's not moving.
Where did you set the coffee? On the table or on the chair or on the floor. Why was it? It's not moving. Of course, it's not moving.
Right.
I set and the ladder is set earthward.
It's top
It just tells you how it got to where it is.
It says top reached the earth
What does it say? No, it says the top reached
heavenward.
heavenward. Critic's going to say, listen, Rabbi, you're making a heavy weather out of earthward, huh? What do you do with heavenward? 3 words later, you know? And if heavenward means towards the heavens or to the heavens, then there's some kind of contradiction here. To the earth, to the heavens? I mean, can't be both. And maybe we're just not understanding the passage altogether.
Isn't it just figurative?
Okay, that's a way out. It's a way out, but I want to show you don't need a way out. I want to show you that the critic who says earthward, heavenward, it's a contradiction, is making a mistake. He's not reading carefully. Look again. The whole thing is 10 words, right? This is microscopic approach. Look again and see that the earthward phrase and the heavenward phrase are not parallel. They're not parallel. Why are they not parallel?
One is set earthward, the other one is reaching.
Number one, the verbs aren't the same. One is set and the other is reached. Okay, and what else isn't parallel?
The whole ladder versus the top of the ladder.
The subjects aren't the same. In the first phrase, it's the ladder. In the second phrase, it's the top of the ladder. Once you see that the verbs and the nouns are both different, that stimulates you to rethink the analysis of what we're talking about. What does the first phrase say? The ladder as a whole was set earthward. That describes how the ladder got into its position. The second phrase describes how big is the ladder. Where is its top? If you imagine seeing this, you see a ladder coming down from heaven, reaching the earth. Okay, but where's the top? And the second phrase tells you the ladder is big enough to reach all the way to the top. Reaching the top isn't getting put in position. Reaching the top is how big it is. Just like if you at a parting of roads and you say to a local, does this road go to Tel Aviv? You are not asking whether it's now the tar is being laid. You mean, where's the other end of the road? Does it get to Tel Aviv or doesn't it? Doesn't get to Tel Aviv. The first phrase describes how the ladder is put in position, and the second phrase describes how far the ladder reaches, what its extent is. Are we together so far? What does this teach you? This teaches you that the ladder which connects earth and heaven is put down from heaven. The initial contact between God and man comes from God. God reaches out and touches man. Man responds to that contact. That's worth knowing. If the whole dream had stopped here, Jacob would have learned something significant and would have passed that on to us. That's why this little section of text gets its own behold. Yeah.
Isn't there like a thing about how it says like God prays and it's like, what does it mean that God prays? But it's like God is only saying that opens up the barrier for us to allow. It's allowing us to pray to Him.
Okay, there's a lot to say about that, but I think that's a good illustration. In other words, He does something to initiate the possibility of contact, and we respond. Once He creates that possibility, we make use of it. But the initial move is made by Him. And that's a theme throughout Jewish thought. There's no spontaneous religious creativity and intuitions and artistic impulses. And our religion starts with the divine breaks into the world, so to speak, that requires, and delivers a message, and we respond. The initial move is always made by God. Okay, second phrase. And behold, agents of God were ascending and descending on it. You could think of agents of God, which is the literal translation, as angels in English. There are two questions at least that should be asked about that tiny phrase. Agents of God, meaning angels, are ascending and descending on it. What two questions leap to your minds? And maybe you'll have more that I didn't think of. Yeah.
That shows that the angels were like already on the earth. They're ascending it.
Oh. Where's the home spot from which this activity starts? If they're ascending and descending, it means they're starting from the earth. The picture is they're going up from the earth and coming back down. Is that a natural picture describing the circuits of angels. Don't angels, so to speak, dwell in heaven? They don't start on the earth. Shouldn't it have been descending and ascending? Yeah.
Yeah, but you said agents, which doesn't necessarily. I mean, you could say malachim, but you could also say like if we're talking agents, it could be like a lesson for like how people can either ascend or.
Yeah, but here it's not. Here it's not that. Here the literal translation is agents of God, and the way you render that in English is angels. We're talking specifically about angels. Although sometimes malach can refer to a person, but here it doesn't. Okay, what else is a little funny here? How good is your angelology? How much do you know about angels?
Angels can't go up and down.
They can't go up and down. Why not?
In terms of greatness, and
But that's true. We're talking about going up and down on a ladder here.
they can't go to heaven though. I mean, they can't become more godly. They can only be what they are, and that's it.
But they can be where God is. The beginning of the book of Job pictures God calling a conference of the angels and dealing with them. No, but something else more.
They don't need a ladder to go up.
They don't need a ladder to go up and down.
Don't they have
Right?
wings or something?
Don't they have wings or something? I mean, isn't that the picture you have in Isaiah and Ezekiel and other places, right? So what are they doing going up and down a ladder? Good, good. But those, all right, so let's,
The whole point of it is a dream.
well, okay, but the dream is supposed to communicate something. This dream took place more than 3,000 years ago, and it's still being studied today. This wasn't just somebody's, after dinner martini induced fantasy. This is something which God dictated to be written in His Torah to teach the coming generations forever, something crucially important. This was the vision that He was given. Now, I'm going to explain this to you, but I want to introduce just a general idea. One can distinguish two types of explanations. Maybe there are more, maybe there are gradations, but you can distinguish an explanation that's deduced from the text. It has to be right. Logic requires it. There may be other things to say as well, but this analysis, this interpretation is required by the text, which I think is true of the analysis I gave you of the first half. That's being set earthward, which, by the way, Rav Hirsch says. A second type of interpretation is where you explain the text. You have problems, and you introduce other information, and then you get an explanation and a solution for your problems. The difference between them is when you're offering an explanation, somebody else might offer another explanation. In place of your explanation, in competition to your explanation. If it's a deduction, that can't happen. But if it's an explanation, it's looser because there can be alternative explanations. Nevertheless, one shouldn't just dismiss explanations. After all you ever get in science is explanations. You never get deductions. You get explanations. And if you think science is important and useful, then you shouldn't be against explanations. You shouldn't treat them as trivial. What I'm going to offer you now is an explanation. This is an explanation that's quite well-founded in the commentators, but others disagree. For example, Maimonides disagrees with what I'm going to say now. But other commentators say it. Rashi says it, and certain other commentators say it. Each of the great people of Jewish history has assigned to him a permanent band of angels. They follow him around. They accompany him. And they're present and sometimes active in the events that take place in his life. Jacob is on his way out of the land of Israel. This vision shows him that when you leave the land of Israel, it costs you. It costs you. The angels who accompany you inside the land of Israel are lost, but they're replaced. They're replaced by an external contingent. So like losing your FBI agents and getting your CIA agents. Right? You're going to external, so there's a different group of agents that work with you. Right? That's what he's seeing his angels who have been with him for decades leaving and being replaced by external angels. Now that's not in the text. That's not in the text, part of the oral tradition, and helps explain. Let me show you that this explanation based on external information might help in other areas as well. You'll see that it's pretty well supported by the text, even though not explicitly mentioned. Take a look on page 169. On 169, this is Jacob coming back to Israel after being absent for 20 years. Chapter 32 at the bottom of the page. Loving whoever he is, woke early in the morning, blessed his sons, and he returned. 2, Jacob went on his way, traveling back to the land of Israel, and agents of God, the same words we had before, encountered him. Jacob said when he saw them, "This is a godly camp." This is a godly camp. So he called the name of that place, and if now your translator had mercy on you, he didn't translate it. He just transliterated it, Machanoim. Because had he translated it, you'd have had a problem slapping you in the face. Machanoim in Hebrew means twin camps. Like Yadoim are your hands and Einayim are your eyes. Machanoim means twin camps. And now it reads, Jacob said when he saw him, "This is a godly camp," and he called the place twin camps. And the reader's going to say, "What? You saw a camp, so you called it twin camps? Why did you do that?" Answer, because that was the group of angels who accompanied him in the land of Israel, coming to greet him on his trip back to Israel. And he still has the angels, the CIA angels who are accompanying him externally. So for a brief time, he's confronted with two camps, the camps that was following him for 20 years, plus the return of the camp of the Israeli angels, and that's why he called it twin camps. If I put that in, this makes perfect sense. If I don't put it in, it's hard to understand. Now something else. What you notice in these two incidents is that the Israeli angels move first. On 145, he saw angels ascending, those are the Israeli angels leaving him, and descending, those are the externals coming to replace them. Here on 169, he's coming back, the Israeli angels come first to greet him, and only afterwards will the externals be lost. Now, if the Israeli angels always move first, and in 169 that implies an overlap between the two groups, that's why he calls it twin camps, what must be happening on 145 if the Israeli angels move first? The contrast to an overlap is a gap. There has to be a gap. If they move first and the externals only come afterwards, there's going to be a gap. And indeed, there is a gap. And that's why on 145, the very next words are, Hashem was standing over him. Why was Hashem standing over him? Because for a time, there are no angels accompanying him. So Hashem himself is standing over him. If I put in this concept, which isn't in the text, if I put in this concept of a band of angels accompanying a person, it works out very nicely. The verses work out very nicely. I have a nice, coordinated, integrated explanation of everything. Again, that doesn't mean it's right. Or it doesn't mean they can't be competitors. But this is the kind of interpretation that is an explanation. Are we together? Okay. Now, why are they going up and down on the ladder? Since they have wings, they don't need ladders. The answer is they are an extension of the idea of the ladder. What's the idea of the ladder? The idea of the ladder is it connects heaven and earth. And as we said, it's put in place by letting it down from heaven. The angels are an embodiment of the connection with God. It's not as if God sends them out as emissaries to do something and then God attends to other affairs. This is how Jacob remains connected to God. So what he's being told is, you've been connected to me through a certain group of angels in a certain manner, with a certain quality, a certain theme inside the land of Israel. When you cross over the border, it's going to be different. You're going to be connected in a different way. Yeah.
You're saying the ladder is completely metaphorical?
The ladder is metaphorical. Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, this is in a dream, right? So, well, there's some technical work to do with the word metaphor, and I don't know whether we should do that now or not. It's not metaphorical. It's
Intangible.
Yes, it's a dream of a ladder, but the word ladder means two poles and cross leaves and places, spaced in such a way that you can step up from one to the other. The word ladder doesn't mean increasing the temperature of water, or more and more pandas, or that would be metaphorical.
I mean metaphorical for the connection of the angels, that, as you were saying just.
No, it's not metaphorical. It's a symbol for that.
So he saw what
The word metaphor, when you say a word is used metaphorically, what you mean is that it is not used literally.
Yeah.
But that's not true. What he saw in the dream was a ladder. Physical things can communicate other things. You saw a mushroom cloud. You say, oh, that just means it was an atom bomb. That doesn't mean there wasn't a mushroom cloud. It doesn't mean the cloud wasn't shaped as a mushroom. It was a real mushroom cloud. But real mushroom clouds mean atom bombs. That doesn't mean the mushroom cloud is metaphorical. There's a real mushroom cloud there.
He saw what.
So what he saw in the vision was a ladder. He saw two poles and cross leaves, and right, that's what he saw. But real things can communicate other ideas as well. To say it's a metaphor is to say that the literal usage is wrong.
Yeah, I thought you meant there was no holes in the thing.
No. In the vision there are poles, right? There's an actual ladder. Okay. So that's the end of verse 12. See how long it takes to get something right? Okay, now let's start 13. This is going to be even more difficult. And behold, that means what we're getting in 13 and 14 gets its own meaning, and 15 gets a different meaning. Well, let's do that first. Read 13 and 14, see if you can find a common theme. Read 15 and see if you can find a contrasting theme, so we can justify why 13 is introduced by behold and 15 is introduced by another behold. Something's got to be in common to all the clauses in 13 and 14, and 15 doesn't have that at all. It has something contrasting.
I don't have a general theme, but I have a slight question on the actual 13 itself, where it says, and Hashem was standing over him, and he said, I am Hashem, God of Abraham, your father, and God of Isaac. It's like Yaakov doesn't know. It's like Yaakov obviously knows who Hashem is. Why would Hashem say, I am Hashem, the God of Abraham and the God of Yitzchak?
Having mentioned it, I'm going to come back to it. Having mentioned it, isn't it much worse than that? The words you just read?
Yeah.
Why?
Abraham, his father.
Who's his father?
Isaac.
Isaac's his father, not Abraham. Come on, guys. This is unbelievable. I am the God of Abraham, your father, and Isaac, without father? Excuse me. I'm talking to Jacob here, right? Okay, we'll come back to that. But look, to whom are the promises addressed in 13 and 14?
To Yaakov.
The one.
No, to
To whom are the promises addressed in 13 and 14? Look carefully.
the children.
To the whole nation coming out of him. Every one of them says your descendants. To whom are the promises addressed in 15? To him alone. That's a categorical difference. One is a set of historical promises for the future, and the other is for you as an individual. That's why it was separate behold, because the subject of 13 and 14 is quite different from the subject of 15. 15 is your personal future, what's going to happen to you as an individual. 13 and 14 are your national future. And then we'll have to understand why the national future comes first and the personal future comes only afterwards. But that's what sets apart 13 and 14 on one hand from 15 on the other hand.
I have just a small question. I was reading the English. I said, I will not forsake you until I have done.
Yeah. And that implies that afterwards you'll forsake him, right? Correct.
Exactly.
Correct. We'll get to that. Good. Very good. That is a legitimate implication. Quite right. Quite right.
We say like son, like Ben David for like a lot of people. Why so
Good.
the father thing is not really
Correct. That's the next step. Let's go back to the identification that I just made heavy weather out of. I'm Hashem, God of Abraham, your father, and God of Isaac. He's pointing out quite correctly. God of Abraham is not Abraham, your father, is not a problem. The word Av in Hebrew, like we saw some of this with Ben and Bas, Av in Hebrew can mean father, grandfather, great-grandfather, to any number of generations. We call Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob our avos, our fathers. That's not just a metaphor. In Hebrew, Av can mean any male ancestor. Okay? But to say God of Abraham, your father, when it's really the grandfather, and you can't say Av, and then say Isaac and leave father out, that's striking. That's striking. You would have expected either to say Av with Isaac alone or with both. But to say Av for the grandfather and not for the father is very striking. Now here's a parting of the paths. You can say, okay, this is a problem. Let's try to solve it. Or you can look around to find other passages that might be relevant before you start your quest. And we're going to do that because there are other passages that are relevant and which might make the natural explanation on this page somewhat problematic. Take a look on page 173. This is Jacob returning to the land of Israel. And his brother Esau is coming to meet him with 400 men, and they're not there to roll out the red carpet. So in verse 10 at the top of the page, Jacob said, God of my father Abraham and God of my father Isaac. Oh ho! So here Isaac does get father. So don't create an explanation. Jacob was out of favor with his father Isaac, so he couldn't call him his father, the God of his fathers, and so on. No, because here father is used for both of them.
So the
Okay.
reason why Hashem's not using it, because Hashem's the one who was speaking last time. Now it's
Correct. That is a difference. That is a difference, which might be important. Now, take a look on page 256. The third passage that's relevant. 257, chapter 46. So Israel, that's Jacob, set out, going down from Israel to the land of Egypt because there's a famine. Israel set out with all that he had. He came to Beersheba and slaughtered sacrifices to God of his father Isaac. And Abraham was left out entirely. Something's going on. Something's going on. I'll tell you what one of the early Hasidic masters, the Kedushas Levi, says. If you hold your fingers in these pages, then you'll be able to go back and forth. He points out that the word Av in Hebrew has another meaning. If you take a look at page 23, you have the identification of the origin of certain types of human activity, skills, abilities. Verse 20, Adar Bor Yaval, he was the first of those who dwell in tents and breed cattle. The word first in Hebrew is Avi. 24, am I reading this right? 20, sorry, did I say 23? I'm sorry, verse 20. 21, the name of his brother was Yuval. He was the first of all who handled the harp and the flute. Again, Avi. The word Av can mean prototype, model, creator of a certain activity which other people imitate. Role model. Says the Kedushas Levi, let's take that meaning. They're all in the book of Genesis. It's fair to use it from here to the other places. Let's take that meaning and see if we can understand what it means in the three places that we're dealing with Jacob. Back to 145. Jacob, as we said, is on his way out of the land of Israel. As you'll see, this is the theme of the whole dream. He's on his way out of the land of Israel. So, God says to him, I'm the God of Abraham, your role model, because Abraham spent a lot of time outside the land of Israel. He was born there, only came to Israel when he was 70 or 75 years old. Then he left again to go to Egypt when there was a famine. You're leaving the land of Israel. Abraham can be a role model for how you deal with the challenges of living outside the land of Israel. Isaac was born in Israel, lived in Israel, and died in Israel. He wanted to leave. God said, no, you can't leave. So Isaac can't be his model now because he's leaving the land of Israel. Go to page 173. There he's coming back to the land of Israel. So he prays to God of my father Abraham, my father Isaac, because in the land of Israel, both can be his role models. And in fact, he's now anticipating some severe trouble with his older brother. And Isaac had trouble with his older brother Ishmael, and Abraham had trouble with his older brother Haran. So the challenges that Jacob is facing are precisely challenges for which both his father and grandfather can be models, and that's why both of them are mentioned with the word Av. On 257, we have a different scenario altogether. Jacob is now going down to Egypt. Why? There's a famine. His son Joseph, who's been missing for 20 years, has now been discovered there as the viceroy, and Joseph says, come down and I'll treat you well. He's on his way down, and he stops and thinks, is this right? Should I go down to Egypt because of a famine? Let's see what my role models teach me. Well, Abraham did exactly this. There was a famine, he went down to Egypt. So Abraham is terrific. He's on my side. But Isaac, my father, was also a role model. He was confronted by a famine. He wanted to go down to Egypt, and God said no. So is what I'm doing right? Who's bothering him now? His father, Isaac's example, is bothering him. He wants to go down, and Isaac was told not to go down. Now you may say, but what about on 145? Isn't he there leaving the land of Israel? Sure, because his father and mother tell him to go. His father's a prophet. But here on 257, his father and mother are long dead. Is it right to go or not? So he offers sacrifices to the God of his father Isaac. It's the God who told Isaac, don't go, that he wants to hear from, to be told, I'm telling you, you can go. And the proof of it is the continuing text. Let's go on in 257. God spoke to Israel in night vision and said to him, Jacob, Jacob, and he said, here I am. Verse 3 in the next page. I am the God of your father. Which father, boys and girls? Isaac, the one whose father, the God of the father that he sacrificed to. Have no fear of descending to Egypt. So you know what he was afraid of? He was afraid of going down to Egypt. And the God who told his father not to go is telling him yes to go. If you take the word av to mean role model, all three passages work out beautifully. They all work out beautifully. That's one clear way to explain it. Okay? Okay, back to 145. All right, back to verse 13. We're not finished with 13 yet. I am Hashem, God of Abraham, your father, God of Isaac. The ground upon which you are lying, to you I will give it and to your descendants. Now, I recommend it because many of the commentators work this way. When you first read something, read it simply, simplistically, literally, with brutal, literal reading, and see if it makes sense. First, take it that way. See if it makes sense. If there's a problem, you may have to say words metaphorically. You may have to interpret it certain ways. But first, do it straight. How does this sound? Straight, with no expansion and no explanation. Simply, the ground upon which you are lying, to you I will give it into your descendants. I'm not getting the point across. I think it sounds terrible. How much space can he take up? 2 by 6? Is God offering him 12 square feet? That's it? Imagine using this as a claim against the Arabs. It's our land! Yeah. 2 by 6, okay. Here's a rock, 2 by 6, you can have that. All the rest belongs to us. Literally, simplistically, the ground on which you're lying, all the ground is being touched by your skin, thanks a lot. Obviously, that can't be what it means. What does it mean? Now, I believe that you could stare at this page and from now until the Messiah comes and you wouldn't get an answer. The answer is not on this page. The answer is due to a prior context. And it's not very far away. Turn back one page. This is yesterday in Jacob's life. It says here, this is the context of a much longer incident, which we will do maybe next week. Look at verse 4. It says, Isaac speaking to Jacob. May he, God, grant you the blessing of Abraham to you and your offspring with you, that you may possess the land of your sojourns which God gave to Abraham. Isaac is saying to Jacob, you are the third patriarch, you are the continuation of tradition. God promised a land to Abraham, and he promised it to me, and you are going to be the one who gets it. So the next night, when God appears to Jacob and says, the land in which you are lying, it's the land your father was talking to you about 18 hours ago. He told you that land is going to be yours, but tomorrow you're leaving. Tomorrow you're exiting. You're going across the border and you're going to be someplace else. So he's telling him that by leaving, you're not going to forfeit your claim to the land. You're leaving the land of Israel now doesn't mean you're being cut off. Look what he's been told so far. God establishes connections. He set up the ladder. The angels are an extension of the ladder. They express the connection. He's going to leave the land of Israel. He's going to lose a connection, but he's not going to be disconnected because he's going to have other angels, which will be connecting to him outside the land of Israel. Furthermore, that connection outside the land of Israel will preserve his title to the land of Israel. It isn't as if he's being cast off, disconnected, but not cut off from God. God is everywhere. God is the whole universe. No, this exiting is temporary, but his connection to the land of Israel historically for the future is not being called into question. The whole dream has one theme. You're leaving the land of Israel. What's going to happen? This is what's going on in Jacob's mind. What's happening to me? I'm being forced out. What's happening to me? The whole dream is addressing that thought. Now, 14. Your offspring shall be as the dirt of the earth. Pity the poor translator. You can't write dirt. Because dirt is dirty. People feel about dirt. They're like, talk about dirt. It's just unpleasant. It's almost insulting. But ask yourself, what is dust? In the southwestern United States, there's a desert. It's called the Dust Bowl. because nothing grows there. Dust is the end. Dust is worthless. Blows in the wind. Dirt, everything on the planet lives from dirt. Everything lives off vegetation ultimately, and vegetation is nourished by the dirt. The dirt is a symbol of fruitfulness, of the capacity to create what's needed for life. When God says they'll be like the dirt of the earth, that's a tremendous blessing. If it really said the dust of the earth, that would be a tremendous, it would be a devastating remark. Very often where the English says dust, it means dirt. It means dirt. Just because your translator is afraid to write dirt, because the English reader, it's going to make him squeamish. Every time you see dust, you should question whether it really is dust or whether it's dirt. Almost always it's dirt.
What's the word for dirt here?
Afar. If you look 4 lines from the bottom, on the beginning of the line, zaracha ka afar. Right? The word for dust is avak, spelled aleph beis kuf, and that's not here. Afar, wherever you see afar, that's dirt, not dust. Indeed, I'll just end with this. Some say the symbolism of dirt is this. Dirt is something that you can walk on, you can roll tanks over it, plant the seed, and the seed will grow. You can be trampled on, but it doesn't injure you. The trampling leaves you just as fertile as you were before. And this is a symbol for the Jewish people in exile. That even though we're trampled on, we remain just as fertile as we were before. That's a symbol of eternity. We're compared to 3 things: to the dirt of the earth, to the sand of the seashore, and to the stars. Each comparison carries its own implication, and dirt is a precious comparison, not something that should make you squeamish or uncomfortable. Okay? We'll pick it up tomorrow in the session.
Quick question.